fondest memories from my childhood was watching Sam Raimi's adaptation of Spider-Man on the big screen. That was in 2002, which puts me at about 6 years old. I left the theater with a sense of awe, and although I've certainly enjoyed other movies since then that I've seen in theaters, I don't think I've ever had that sense of wonderment again. The film that followed might even have improved on its predecessor, but it's definite that Spider-Man 3, although in my opinion not as bad as what some believe, represented a clear fall from grace for the series. And although as I've gotten older, the quality of certain films from my childhood might fall short from what nostalgia might have had me believe, I can still go and watch the first Spider-Man and enjoy myself immensely. It was after Spider-Man 3 that things were really thrown off course. Spider-Man 4, which was scheduled for release in 2011, was abruptly cancelled, and instead, a reboot titled The Amazing Spider-Man arrived in 2012. The Amazing Spider-Man swapped the awkward, nerdy Tobey Maguire for a much more stylish and cool Andrew Garfield, garnering improved critical success and continuing to substantiate considerable profits for Sony. As a film, I thought it was alright, but it didn't really offer anything special. I'd say that the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone was the highlight of most of the film, as well as the eventual follow-up. It didn't help matters that 2012 was the same year that the Marvel Cinematic Universe started to pay off in big ways, releasing the Avengers film, a film that was unfortunately absent one web crawler. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was released next, in 2014, and there it received mixed reviews and failed to build on their first Amazing Spider-Man success. The Amazing Spider-Man made $130 million less than Spider-Man 3 worldwide, $74 million less domestically, and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 made $49 million less than The Amazing Spider-Man did worldwide, and $60 million less domestically, and it did so with a more inflated budget. Personally, I thought The Amazing Spider-Man 2 was a more entertaining film than the previous, and I enjoyed it more than Spider-Man 3. Although I will admit that the film is overstuffed, and a lot of the greater moments are diluted by the lack of discipline in terms of structure. Sony was so caught up in developing a cinematic universe of their own that they were stretching themselves too thin and bogging down their strengths by exacerbating their weaknesses. Unfortunately, the trajectory clearly showed that the Spider-Man movie franchise was on a downward spiral. Enter Captain America: Civil War. Spider-Man has finally joined the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Tom Holland's performance of the character drew a lot of attention. Some criticism, some praise. Judging by what I saw in Civil War, I actually had a mixed bag of emotion. As much as I was amused, I was unsure of how he would do with his own film. In 2017, Spider-Man Homecoming released to an immensely positive critical reception, easily beating out the last 3 entries in the series and coming close to the critical acclaim received by Spider-Man 2. Critics singled out Tom Holland's performance and the lighthearted approach that the film took. Spider-Man Homecoming also showed signs of rejuvenated interest in the friendly neighborhood superhero. Domestically, Homecoming improved on The Amazing Spider-Man 2 by over $100 million. And not only that, but it also brought in a little bit more than the first Amazing Spider-Man did. And that's even with adjusting for inflation. Something else that helps Homecoming is that it was done with a production budget of less than $200 million, whereas the first Amazing Spider-Man exceeded that mark, and the second film neared nearly $300 million. The totals might not necessarily be as high as Sony would have hoped, given that they bit the bullet and agreed to work with Marvel, and likely hoped that the worldwide totals would be closer to the Sam Raimi series instead of the Mark Webb series, but I think the prospects presently look very good for Spider-Man in terms of audience interest. After all, Spider-Man is a very saturated series, and one that I think the ship has sailed on for a lot of viewers. But I think with this approach, they have a chance at introducing the characters fresh, and I think that Homecoming is a definite hit for those involved. Spider-Man Homecoming is directed by John Watts, a director whose work I'm familiar with for the Eli Roth-produced film Clown, and stars Tom Holland in the title role, an actor who I most recently saw in The Heart of the Sea, alongside Marvel co-star Chris Hemsworth. As you'd expect, the film is centered around Peter Parker. This iteration of the series is more attuned to the high school aesthetic, introducing characters that will certainly come to mean more in later follow-ups. After the events of Captain America: Civil War, Peter Parker has been left high and dry with no real in-depth interaction with any of the members of the Avengers, and told not to fly too close to the sun. This is all well and good until Vulture, a character played by Michael Keaton, who is ironically being typecast as a Birdman, starts popping up, compelling Spider-Man to try and stop him. Something that Spider-Man Homecoming gets right out of the gate, is of course the casting decision of Tom Holland. While I was on the fence about his ability to do the character, I can say that he succeeds with flying colors, creating, in my opinion, the most authentic portrayal of the character to date. Alongside this is a more in-depth high school-centric theme, The dynamic feels a lot more grounded in reality, as opposed to the stylized portrayals seen in the Sam Raimi trilogy or the less in-depth execution in the web series of films. I think, above all else, one of the biggest compliments I can give to Spider-Man Homecoming is that I think the stars have aligned from a character standpoint more than they have in any other attempt with a character. The film is charming and funny and deeply entertaining, while at the same time remaining light on its feet. Some might have the opinion that Marvel is too silly or juvenile in its films, and my rebuttal is that this is a film about a teenage boy that dresses up like a spider and fights crime, and that the simple foundation of these films doesn't really beckon for tackling serious, hard-hitting topics, and besides, Captain America Civil War was plenty serious and plenty great. I will say, however, that I do not think this film is on par with Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2. This film is lighthearted and easygoing, and does so with great success. It's practically the perfect superhero escapism. Have you ever heard of the discussions of whether a video game can be considered as an art form? The concept that certain video games can go above and beyond the prototypical expectation in their design and amount to something more than that. To me, the first Spider-Man films captured a happy medium between lighthearted and serious, high-stake matters. The film embraced their comic book essence while at the same time creating an ongoing drama and moral conflict. You've heard the phrase, "with great power comes great responsibility," about a million times now, and I know if I see a scene with Uncle Ben's death again, I'll likely groan. We've all seen the Mary Jane kiss, but when the films came out, these were not rehashes or run down. I cared about Peter's struggles, and I absolutely loved Defoe as Green Goblin, especially the final scenes involving him. Michael Keaton does well in his role as the Vulture, an everyman that doesn't want to take over the world and only really wants a slice of the pie for himself, and that adds a dimension I enjoy. I also enjoyed several scenes involving him, but I never really felt that he was really that great of an adversary. In a lot of ways, Spider-Man Homecoming is the best incarnation of Spider-Man to date, and I believe this film receives an A on the paper. The film's funny, it's enjoyable, and it leaves me thinking greater things are sure to come. But I think this film receives an A on the paper in a class somewhere less tonally advanced, insightful, than what Sam Raimi did at his best. The action scenes, while visually impressive, also don't trigger much of a response either. It has only been a couple of weeks since I saw the film, and yet I can barely recall any real lasting impression from those scenes. It is terrific to see Spider-Man portrayed as a much younger actor, though, and I think that's really one of the most charming aspects about this film. Instead of a battle pitting good against evil, of having unity amongst civilians, it's about a boy who's trying to find his own identity, someone who keeps falling down and getting back up off grit and determination. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is like a comic book store come to life on the silver screen, with issues coming out one by one, and with this, Spider-Man Homecoming doesn't have that standalone quality that other entries might have had. And that isn't meant as like a stab or a diss, but it's more to say that I think the picture as a whole bodes very, very well, and that's something I think should be taken away from my review of Spider-Man Homecoming. Not necessarily my comparisons to previous entries, because I think you have to look at this film as trying to accomplish something completely different, and this film is a return to form for Spider-Man. Thanks for listening to my review, and now tell me, what are your thoughts on Spider-Man Homecoming? Do you think it completely outdoes every other Spider-Man film before it? Do you think it's a step in the wrong direction? How would you rank it against the other Spider-Man films? And who would you like to see Spider-Man face off against in upcoming films? I'd love to know your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment below. And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe, because I'll be posting more reviews in the upcoming weeks. And now, rabies and germs, I don't really believe in top 10 lists or anything like that, and so I thought it would be fun if I inducted great films and video games into its own special section, viewable on the N.Jay Today website. For this video's entry, keeping with the superhero theme, I am proud to announce Batman Arkham City as the first video game inductee.